This is Shimmy, Team Redshyft member, very skilled Rocket League freestyler and, oh sorry, I misread, the biggest cheater in Rocket League history, who 2 years ago now got exposed by members of his team for faking all of his best montages. He edited the replay files for his trick shots to just pretend that he hit stuff he didn't. Obviously, he was kicked from the community and stopped posting trickshotting videos. So why am I bringing all of this up? Because today we get to have a look at what a cheater does after they get caught. This is Shimmy, Team EXE member, aim coach, and very skilled aimer. At this point, he had been in the Aimtraining community for about a year and a half and was a well-respected member of it. He gave advice to people in Discord servers, created very commonly referenced and praised aiming advice videos, and offered paid coaching. However, he only really played aim trainers, not the things you're usually meant to be training your aim for, first-person shooters. This isn't actually as uncommon as you might think. Even though aim trainers were made with the specific intent of practicing, it's taken on a whole new role for a lot of people as something adjacent to speedrunning. They're surprisingly addictive, and the satisfaction of continually seeing your high scores go up is compounded by how the community is built on top of these existing trainers. There are ranks and benchmarks, overall leaderboards, category-specific leaderboards, and so much more. Most people still use these as motivators to improve in-game, but for people like Shimmy, these leaderboards are the game, and the time investment required to reach as high as he did is immense. Personally, I'm currently number 5 on the Voltaic Benchmarks leaderboard, and I have around 2,000 hours over the course of 5 years. And from what I've heard from other top players, that is a relatively low number. So it's a tight-knit community and we all know each other fairly well. But at a point, the pond might start to feel a bit too small and Shimmy wanted to branch out. He had reached his goal of Astra, the second highest rank on the Voltaic benchmarks, and wanted to start applying all of that time training into FPS games. A few months ago, he had joined an aiming team, Team EXE, to create resources for aim trainers, but they primarily focus on Call of Duty and Battlefield montages, and that was an obvious place to start. So how well did his very good aim translate into FPS games? He was pretty good. His aim looks quite controlled, as you'd expect from someone with this amount of time in aim trainers, and his flicks look quite snappy at points too. Very impressive for someone so new to... Oh, he's just been kicked from Team EXE for using an aimbot. For a second time now, Shimmy had been exposed by his own team members for making cheated montages. How did they know he was cheating though? Maybe he was just so good from all of his time in aim trainers that they made a mistake and accused an innocent player. There isn't any evidence he was cheating included in the tweet, after all. Unfortunately not. He was cheating, and all the proof we needed to know for certain was in his very own videos. A lot of the clips in his most recent Call of Duty video look strange, but I don't think there was enough to say anything definitive there. He does track people very accurately after flicks, but that isn't impossible. Very hard for sure though, and takes a lot of in-game experience, something he is lacking. It's something to ask about, but not enough for an accusation like this alone in my opinion. However, his video before that with Battlefield 5 clips is much worse. It's not actually the crazy flicks to people he can't see that give it away though. Other people can do that without cheats too, and highlights are highlights after all. Instead, all you need to see to know for certain is this movement. On the first kill, he's aiming at upper chest height, which is ideal. High enough to land the occasional accidental headshot, but without the consistency issues that aiming at such a small target can bring. And yet, he corrects down, right to the enemy's crotch level. The kill after, he flicks, makes a correction back to the target, which looks normal, then once again corrects down and perfectly tracks him after. There is no reason to adjust down here, it makes no sense, but he does it both times. Next he flicks to the door, predicting that the enemy he saw earlier in the clip will come back after hearing the gunshots, and he's right. Once again, he's pre-aiming around shoulder height and adjusts down the moment he sees the enemy, with a perfect follow-through exactly on their crotch. This is a pattern throughout this entire video. Any corrections that are made to any other part of the player model are shaky, while corrections to waist level are instant with perfect tracking. This is the sign of an aim key being used. Shimmy would just press a button to lock onto his enemy, and he just so happened to have it set to lock onto their waists. Which is exactly what he admitted to in his confession. Okay, so why would someone who plays aim trainers need to use an aim bot to get clips? It doesn't make any sense. He had very good aim. He shouldn't have felt the need to do this. So what was his reasoning in his confession?
After joining EXE without in-game experience but with a strong Kovacs reputation, it felt like I was turned into a litmus test by both communities to determine if pure Kovacs mechanics gave an edge to actual gameplay, and how large it would be. From the beginning, it felt very isolated. People that would give genuine, useful advice were just a few, and most people gave dismissive responses ranging from just play to "you're a voltaic Astro dude, you should be telling me how to play." The expectations were suffocating on both sides, where one side expected quick in-game domination due to my raw mechanics, and the other side would devalue my Kovacs achievements because I didn't instantly dominate and get god-tier clips. There was no winning at all, and it only happened because I let others dictate my worth and value.
Shimmy is correct here. A lot of people took his exposure as a chance to have a jab at aim trainer players, because some of them do have a tendency to not do as well as people expect in FPS games, but I don't think that's entirely fair. Anyone who plays only aim trainers knows what they're getting into. People in the community constantly remind newcomers that if your goal is in-game improvement, then you shouldn't put more than at most 20% of your total playtime into them, and even then that's probably too much. People like Shimmy play a lot more than recommended, not to get better at any specific game, but because they love pushing themselves to see what's possible, how high they can climb that leaderboard. And I think even playing aim trainers like this, it does help when picking up games too. Shimmy was better than the average FPS player would be at his playtime in COD by a lot, even without cheats. I know this for certain because he actually has another montage posted before the other two and not cheated. So we can have a proper look at what his aim looks like, and it didn't translate as well as you'd expect. He doesn't look bad, better than most, but in aim trainers he was in the top 25 of the last season's benchmarks. He was very good at aiming, so why doesn't that shine through here? This is quite the topic. Of course, there are other variables like game sense, positioning, nerves, recoil that are present more in games versus aim trainers that might have made aiming harder, but that stuff isn't that difficult to learn, especially when you have a strong mechanical foundation to work from. Personally, I think much more of that difficulty in translating his mechanics came from specifically how he trained them. Yes, the shimmy static technique. Static dot scenarios in aim trainers are made to improve your fundamental mouse control, isolating flicks and micro adjustments to improve both movements. This is what Shimmy played the most and was most known for, but he took a bit of a different approach to what's conventional. Instead of focusing on having snappy flicks, his perspective, as he puts it in his tutorial, is that
flicks suck.
And instead he focused on fluidity between targets. He got some very impressive scores doing this, and his tutorial explaining this technique was very popular, though controversial. But I think a lot of the potential issues it has for in-game training were revealed here. He never built that sense of urgency that you see with in-game flicks, especially in games like this. Having good technique is important, of course, but what matters is if you can maintain that technique under pressure. When he goes for those flicks, he looks unstable and uncertain because of a lack of practice. He trained for aim trainers, not for these games, and the problems that caused were easily visible. So then, because he was good at aim trainers, the expectations felt pushed onto him, and I get it. I get those comments too. Because I'm not the top rank or the best duelist in a game I don't play, people try to devalue my knowledge and experience. This community can be really toxic sometimes, and I dislike that type of response when aim trainer players try to branch out. We should be encouraging them to play more and grow and apply their existing skills. Because no matter what, it takes time for someone to learn a new skill, even if they are good in an adjacent one. But a lot of the time, when someone who is good at aim trainers puts in that effort, they do really well. Look at Seraphrag. She started out as a Kovacs player, swapped to playing COD, and then swapped again to Valorant, and is now one of the best female Valorant players in the world. Or Cartoon, thousands of hours in aim trainers, one of the best in Deadlock, and has been top 50 Radiant in Valorant. Or Yams, Minigod, the list goes on and on. While aim trainers won't instantly make you good at any game you play, they do help a lot when picking up new games, and I do honestly think that Shimmy would have gotten quite good if he had put in the time. Wait a second though, if Shimmy wasn't willing to put the time into getting good at Rocket League or FPS games, why would aim trainers be any different? He clearly cares about how people perceive his skill level. It's been his motivation to cheat twice now. It's no worries though, he addressed that in his apology.
I've never cheated in aim trainers, and never will. But all the issues that have been mentioned in this document, none of them have ever applied to me in the aim trainer.
Which raised my eyebrows a bit. I've certainly felt that pressure in both, and I know other people have too. What makes it supposedly so different for him?
I've always actively rejected attempts from people to compete or compare scores, and always have stayed in my own lane and played whatever scenarios I enjoyed at the time.
Well, this just isn't true at all. He was constantly sniping scores, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a weird thing to lie about, especially in your apology. Oh, sorry, explanation. People tend to cheat in aim trainers in a very different way to how they do in games. Aimbotting has been tried before, but usually gets caught very quickly. With no visual clutter to obscure how your aim looks, their inhuman style becomes more obvious. So instead, people turn to slowing down the aim trainer. Aiming in slow motion makes your movements still look human and believable if done right, while also giving you a massive advantage when competing with others. This does come with some telltale signs though, one of which is that it would increase your frames per second, since a second in the eyes of the game is now longer. And then I remembered something. There's this scenario, .ts Advanced. Shimmy got a really good score on it really quickly, right after it came out. It took me like 5 hours of playtime to beat, and in that time I checked his little replay stats on the Kovacs leaderboard, and his FPS really stood out to me. 1463. This is way higher than what I get, and I have a better PC than him. At the time I thought, wow, he must have a really optimized Windows, but now, after this, I couldn't be so sure. Now, his FPS wasn't impossibly high. I've seen people get more, but it was weird, and I mentioned this to a friend of mine, Ricky. He, at this point, was certain there had to be more. Looking back, his VODs did seem a bit strange, oddly fast for someone who says that flicks suck. So he went digging, and came back with countless oddities, the same scenario getting different frame rates hours apart, his frame rate changing within the same play session. So I started looking too and found something that convinced me personally. On this scenario here, Shim Micro, his FPS suddenly increases by around 10% midway through his play session, and in sync with the frame rate increase, his scores also increase by 10%. This is exactly what would happen if you were to slow down the game to 90% speed. Ricky wanted more though. He didn't think people would be convinced by this evidence, even despite Shimmy's history, and was certain that cheating went back a lot further. The first thing he did was to create tables to compare frame rate versus score on lots of scenarios. There was a definite trend here, but he also discovered that Kovacs saves both the local time of when the scenario started and the Unix time of when the scenario ends. By converting the Unix time into Shimmy's time zone, he could see how long in real time each run took, which should be 1 minute. But it wasn't. It was 1:07. Now, this alone isn't definitive proof. Scores can take time to upload, or someone could pause mid-run. I'm Australian, so my internet is not great and scores sometimes take ages to upload for me. But what made this so convincing is how it aligned with the frame rate and score increases. Once again, a 10% change in all values, in sync with each other. There are other players with longer runs than 1 minute, and others still with very high frame rates. But no one we looked at had this happen once, and with a very limited data set, we saw it with Shimmy 4 times. At this point, it was over. This was undeniable, but Ricky found something more definitive still. One of the only proof standards this community has is these timers, showing your local time for when you start each run. These have to be turned on for a run to be accepted as legit by Voltaic, the largest AIM community, but the broader community will still accept a run as legit without them if it's coming from a reputable player. Shimmy's runs that he submitted to Voltaic all had that timer, but none of the ones he didn't submit did. This is already strange. I personally never toggle the timer. It's out of the way and you have to make an active effort to do it, but Shimmy's timer was also in different places in different recordings. Just to show you what this would involve, to move the timer, you have to go to this menu, click this option, and manually drag it around. I haven't done this in like a year. Ricky had the idea at this point that Shimmy might have recorded the timer after the run and edited it into the final run. But if that was the case, that would cause a desync between that uploaded local time in the stats file and the time visible when watching Shimmy's recording. So he checked, and sure enough, they were different. This isn't possible without editing in some way. The value that your in-game clock shows will always be written into the stats file. Even if you change your Windows clock, both values will change. He checked multiple other players and none of them had this happen. With all this evidence, I feel very confident saying that a lot of Shimmy's more recent scores are cheated. Probably basically everything in these last couple months, and we can confirm that 7 of the 8 scores he submitted for the Astro rank had their timers edited in. And the other one we just can't check. Kovacs isn't storing that score's data anymore. The only reason I can think of for editing in timers that doesn't involve cheating would be accidentally leaving it on when going for a benchmark PB, but that's the kind of mistake you only make once. Between everything else we found and his history with cheating in multiple games, I see that possibility as very unlikely. How far back does this go though? Was Shimmy a legitimate top player who only cheated for a small score increase, or has he been timescaling the whole time? I assumed the former when we started looking into this, but his Discord messages tell a bit of a different story. See, Shimmy used to have his timers on. No editing, benchmark or not, his timers were always there in the same place. Even though these VODs are long deleted from YouTube, we can still check because he used to post a lot in the Voltaic Discord and ask people for advice on his gameplay. From the start of his time playing until the 25th of May 2024, he had them on for everything. This was the first VOD he posted that lacked them, saying he had to reset his Windows. I think I believe this. I've actually made the same mistake in the past and had my timers off for a while. But I think that Shimmy took note that no one asked him about the timers, where they went or why he had them off. At this point, he was acutely aware of what they were for, preventing time scaling, and realizing that no one cared that they were missing probably gave him the idea to try. About 10 days after he reset his Windows, he asked the moderator in Voltaic if they could verify a run for him. Generally, to have a run added to the leaderboards, you post it in the leaderboards channel, but Shimmy wasn't asking for it to be added. He was just checking it was verifiable, you know, since his settings got reset when he reinstalled Windows. Now, putting aside the massive difference in skill between this and his score from less than a month prior, look at those timers! Not only have they moved, but this is the worst editing I've ever seen. They don't even look close to correct. The moderator didn't notice though, probably because he wasn't submitting it for anything and said it looked fine. I think this is when it all started. At this point, all of his scores got a massive boost and his aim looked way cleaner as well. Comparing old runs to new was night and day, and even at the time people noticed how quick his improvement was. The highest rank he got to legitimately was Grandmaster, roughly top 1% of the player base, and he cheated all the way up to Astra, top 0.01%. This also kind of recontextualizes his video about static technique. His argument hinged on the idea that overall speed developed over time while focusing on maintaining a consistent pace of movement, but he never proved it to be possible. It comes off as him trying to put into words what makes players like Zionlo so good, but missing the mark. They are still flicking, they just have control over their flicks. This is the secret: control over flicks, not removing them entirely. Shimmy couldn't do this. He thinks flicks are bad because he can't control them. But when playing in slow motion, he could get good scores that looked fast without ever needing to truly flick. This was a bit of a gut punch to me. Shimmy and I weren't good friends, but we'd spoken a bit, we're on good terms. Even if I disagreed with his ideas, it was cool to see someone new trying their hand at educational aiming content, and I, at first, believed him in his reply when he said he never cheated in aim trainers. I clearly wasn't the only one. He got heaps of comments congratulating him for his honesty and saying that they're glad he's learned when he's still lying to our faces. Lying to his friends who he is competing with, who he is beating the scores of, who he is inadvertently claiming to be better than by cheating. He was only caught because of his carelessness and only didn't get to the top of the scene because he wasn't willing to put in that effort himself. Even when cheating, he couldn't even get close to Matty's skill without making things too obvious. And I am in disbelief that he had the nerve to mention potentially returning to paid coaching in his apology for cheating while still lying. For clarity, please don't harass Shimmy on my or anyone's behalf. I'm only bringing this all to light because he is still not being truthful in his apology, and I've seen people adamantly defending him because he only cheated some Call of Duty clips. We should expect better from members of this community as a bare minimum, let alone from someone who people pay to coach them. The thing is, it would be naive to assume it's only Shimmy doing this. At the very start of this investigation, Ricky tried to slow down the game to see if his FPS would change in the way I thought Shimmy's was. It took minutes. Longer to get a convincing VOD for sure, and you do have to be good to make fake world records look real, but getting to a good skill level is 100 times easier than being the best of the best. And for someone like Shimmy, the temptation to get to that point instantly was just too strong. So, what can we do? The first step is to stop accepting VODs without the Windows clock as verifiable as a community. Slowing down the game itself automatically slows down these timers. It's just this clock that would be disconnected, and making that look real is the only thing about slowing down the game that takes any effort at all. Having it on isn't proof that someone's legit. Like we saw with Shimmy, it's not hard to fake, but there is no reason to ever have this off. This really wouldn't be enough though. It's inevitable that this will happen again and again until we really get something set in place to prevent this kind of cheating. Ricky and I have some ideas for potential cheat detection methods, but I don't think the community at large would be very positive about them right now. My worry personally is how people would react to more strict proof standards. For example, enabling specific FPS counters would make it a lot harder to cheat, but I'm certain people would reply with, "It's just an aim trainer, who cares bro, why do we have to turn this on to aim train?" or something similar. I'm really not sure how we should go about fixing this, just that something needs to change, even if it's only community mentality. If I had to suggest one change to Kovac directly, I think it would be good to have stats logs visible for more than just the past 10 runs online. This is why those charts stopped at 10 scenarios earlier and why we couldn't check that other run in Shimmy's benchmarks. Before I end things off, I want to remind everyone why we do this in the first place. In Shimmy's apology, he says, "It wasn't about learning and mastering new skills. It was about validation and receiving compliments and praise." This is probably the most honest thing he said in that apology. He was referring to Call of Duty and Battlefield, but I think it's why he cheated in Aim Trainers too, and Rocket League before that. When researching his past in Rocket League, people talked about how he would ask them to watch and comment on his cheated montages, begging them to hype him up for shots he didn't achieve. It was always about the social credit for him, but that's probably why he felt his achievements were so devalued. I only appreciate the compliments I get on my gameplay as much as I do because of the effort, the 5 years of aim training I have put in to get to the level I'm at. Praise for things you know you didn't do will always ring hollow. And at the same time, the praise isn't why you should learn a new skill. The joy of it comes from watching yourself grow and learn and improve, and seeing that time and effort manifest in ways you never thought possible for yourself. No matter your skill level, this is something we can all experience because growth is universal. Don't rob yourself of that feeling by cheating your way past that growth. Thanks for watching.